To have you with us this morning, so we'll get cracking with these things. Thank you so much for joining me. Just some little tips along the way. I'm going to just talk a little bit about 4 areas, and it's just encourage me. If you agree with me, you feel, hand signal, because I can't hear or say anything. And at the end, when we do a question time, the easiest way to do a question time is for you to put your hand up. I'll read your name off the screen, and you can unmute and ask the question. Are we all okay with that? Yeah, that's it, the thumbs up thing. So come on, Dan Ashley. Thumbs up. I need to know you're in with me. And Mike Holton, come on, thumbs up. Excellent. So we're already living through a time of incredible change and stress pastorally as a church. And now we've discovered, on top of all of that, we've just had enormous news about the shape of ground level. So I want to address 4 areas for us this morning that are going to have some overview and some practical input as well. So the 4 areas, if you're taking notes, that I want to consider today and address with you today are our personal pastoral strategy, our core team strategy, our core leaders, and the third thing, our congregational strategy, and then our community strategy. So they're the 4 areas I'm going to look at today as we talk through and try to discover a plan for you, to support you, to give you some idea, some clues as to what you're doing. Begin in Luke chapter 8, the church is scattered. We discover the church is scattered and everything changes enormously. The church is effectively divided into self-contained units. They're right across the countryside, right across the known world to some extent at that point. But here's an interesting thought, just to plant in your minds. The key leadership of that first church remained in Jerusalem. They stayed as that central anchor point because key leaders provide the continuity and the security for people. The flock need to hear their pastor's voice at this particular time. And that's why I want to begin looking at our personal strategies at this particular time. So, whether you're the senior leader of the church, whether you're a connect group, small group leader, a youth leader, or a children's leader, your role is incredibly important for that part of the flock. You need to be that secure point. So I'm going to begin a practical talk now about the personal strategies for pastoral leadership and care of yourself at this time. If you've got your microphone turned on, somebody, if you just knock your microphone off for a moment, that'd be really great. Brilliant. Excellent. So personal strategies. We've got in our church a member of our congregation. We are really blessed by this, but we've got a trauma specialist counsellor who is a trauma specialist. She works with Rape Crisis and various other organisations. She's taught me through 1 or 2 helpful techniques and helpful bits of information that I'd like to share with you when it comes to personal. When it comes to personal, sorry, I've been really distracted by something. I'm going to just scan across to see if I can find out whose microphone is turned on. No, I think it's headquarters that are turned on. So she's explained 3 things that I want to ask you to consider for you as a leader at this particular time. When we go through a trauma time, and I don't want to overstate, we are in, to a large extent, emotionally and mentally, a trauma time because our entire world has changed. And we have to acknowledge that. The first phase that we go through when we're facing trauma, mentally, emotionally, we go through what's referred to as an acute phase. An acute phase. It lasts a week, 10 days, maybe a little longer. That's the point when we go over the top. When we, to a sense, go into a little bit of denial about the situation. When we speak incredibly positive. This is when I think, forgive me for this, but there's been a lot of great prophecies and expectation and high energy and a lot of driven passion about what we can do as church at this particular time. But, that's our immediate acute response. And we need to be aware that that is what's happening. Our second is to go through an emotional phase. And when we enter an emotional phase, so often what will happen at that point is we become depressed, we become stressed, we become anxious, we might become exceptionally joyful, but our emotions are all over the place. We may lose energy, we may find excess energy, but that is part of the natural phase. And you need to be aware of that happening within yourself because you're communicating and talking, and you need to allow yourself to be responding in these ways. The third thing you'll tend to do as a leader in this situation is go through a coping phase. you start to ask yourself, why? Why now? What next? What can I do? You begin to strategize, and that's really where we are at this point today. I want to talk about how we can manage that intelligently, spiritually, with a genuine heart, and with solid values and foundation. And in order to do that, we mustn't deny the feelings of the acute phase, the emotional phase. So let me be a little bit daring and say to you, you're going to go through fear, a fear of loss in your church. What will happen if there is no church? And we've got to find faith over that fear, because the Lord is building his church and he will not surrender that. He will not walk away from that. So accept that we've got to have faith over fear. But I want to add two more things into that. I want to say you need to have faith over fame. Because right now, lots of us are online for the first time. Lots of us are going very public. And isn't it exciting to be a TV star and to count up all the likes that we see? How many likes did I get for that presentation? Actually, you know, it's fairly shallow when we do the likes thing. And it makes us feel good, but is it having an impact? And I just want to encourage you that one of the things we really need to think about is what impact we're having. Not just are people liking it and making us feel good, but are we actually creating a response? What is the quality of what we're doing? It's not about our fame, it's about caring for our people and beyond that. So just seek to have faith over fame. And the other thing is finance. Certainly most of the churches I've been speaking to in my connection and beyond, one of the big fears is finance. Lots of churches, particularly smaller churches, their finance still particularly comes through weekly offerings on a Sunday. You know, we're going to have to find faith through that and over that. And so that is going to be a big challenge. You're going to have the courage to talk to your congregation about the realities of the finance of the church. So I do encourage you to find faith in that thing. Address your fear, address the fame issue, and address the finances, because they're really foundational issues, and do them all through faith. So there were just some initial thoughts about why the core leadership needs to stay where it is. Now I'd like to suggest some practical things as well, because this is going to be a very practical discussion, and I hope it will be helpful to you. So number 1A under personal strategies, don't overcommit yourself. Don't overcommit yourself. Today we're going to discover that lockdown is going to last at least 3 more weeks. I've got some exciting news for you. After that 3 weeks is up, I absolutely promise you, lockdown will continue for another 3 weeks. Church, we may slowly begin to lift lockdown, but I don't think we'll be allowed to have large gatherings of things like churches for some time to come. And certainly wisdom says prepare for the long haul. My own daughter works on the front line as a nurse. So she works actually in the COVID ward. She's a respiratory nurse. And I know they're planning for many months of working in this way, not just a few weeks. So the anticipation is that their whole life is going to be tipped up for a long time to come. Wisdom as core leaders is to say, prepare for that. So don't overcommit yourself now. You know, if you're trying to do a Bible study morning and evening, if you're trying to preach 3 times on a Sunday online, if you're trying to do the thoughts of the day, if you're trying to phone every member of your congregation and beyond, you will burn out. So be in this for the long haul. But B, do find some personal space. I give you permission to find personal space. You need to do this. And when I say personal space, I don't just mean Disney Plus on TV. And Disney Plus is great, but there are only so many Marvel films and cartoons I can watch. And you know, actually, they don't feed your brain. They kind of bypass it. It's like junk food for your mind. It's wonderful, but it's a treat. I encourage you to give your mind time to recover. You know, if you're like me, you love your church, and you'll be laid in bed every night thinking about it, praying about it, stressing about it. If you get a quiet moment, you know, yesterday I tried to sit out in the sun, and my mind just started to run through people in the congregation, things I needed to do, calls I needed to make. Find some time to fill your mind. Find something creative, something that releases. I have started to bake. This is a practical tip. I have started to bake. I've never baked in my life, and here's a key tip for you. If you're making scones, put a teaspoon of lemon curd into the mix. It gives it a cream effect, and it just transforms the flavour. And my scones, I'm not bragging, but they are awesome. So I've made 2 successful batches. I'll let you know if I made 3 successful batches. But you know what? It's creative, it's distraction, and there's something creative about our soul that reflects the Lord. Find something creative for you that rests your mind. And the third thing, let's see, do talk. Do talk to other people beyond your setting. It's great to have your home team in your home church setting, but take advantage of the fact that we're part of ground level. Phone other church leaders, phone friends across the network, make contact. If you're not sure who that might be, just give a call and somebody will be connected with you. But it's important that you talk beyond your setting. Sometimes just to let it out, to talk peer to peer, just to splurge it out in a safe place is really important. And the safe place for splurging it all out is not social media. It's not shouting at your partner. It's not pestering the kids. It's not, talk to somebody beyond your setting. It is so important to do that. Think on this. Even Jesus needed to take time out by himself. And even Jesus prayed this prayer. How much longer, Lord, have I got to be with them? How much longer, Lord? So, if even Jesus feels that, that kind of gives you permission to know that when you're feeling that way, you are not unspiritual. You are a normal leader. You're a normal Christian. Right now, the flock, our churches need to hear your voice, need to hear the leadership voice. So you've got to look after that voice. Okay, so the second thing, sorry, I'm being really fast because I'd love us to have some question time at the end. Yesterday, the question time was great. And I want us to have some time to do question time at the end. So the second thing, I want to look at our core team strategy. Your wider leaders, the leadership as a whole of your local church setting. We must remain faith-based and not fear-driven when we meet as a team, when we talk. I'll be really frank with you now. One of the biggest concerns I've had the last 2 or 3 weeks, talking around and phoning around other churches, touching base with people, is the level of fear that is driving them to do new things or to try things or to react in some way. What we've got to do as leaders is understand that the people that we're working with, the leaders we're working with, a big part of our identity has just been lost. The roles that they're in church have shifted and changed, if not gone completely. There's a degree of loss and grieving goes off because of that. I don't know about you, but I'm speaking now from my church office. So I've just walked through our big auditorium that's empty and has been for weeks. And when I walked through that, I had a real sense of grieving. That, where are the people I love? I want to meet with them. I want to hug them. I want to see them and see their face. And, our wider teams, our core teams are just the same. They have a sense of grieving and loss too. We've got to acknowledge that and recognise that a big part of their identity is just being pushed to one side. So one thing I do want to challenge you on in the midst of all of this is not to be political, not to do politics in the middle of this lockdown, middle of this crisis as we care for church. Lots of us want to express opinions as to whether we should be in lockdown or shouldn't be in lockdown, whether the government is right or wrong. You know what? Your opinion won't change that right now. And our primary call is to care for our people. And me as senior leader, my primary call is to care for our core leaders. So I encourage you, forget the politics. Let's in faith face the situation with them. So how do we do that? Number one, be honest with them. Be honest with your leaders. Motivational speeches are great, but sometimes they ring a little bit hollow. We've got to be sure that when we're doing our motivational speeches and sermons and talks online, that we're being honest. Acknowledge that people are fearful. Acknowledge that sometimes people have anxiety. Acknowledge that there's a concern for their ongoing purpose and their identity. It's really important. Remember the things I mentioned about the trauma, the acute phase? Well, our people are going through the same things. They're going through the acute phase too, their emotions, their coping stage. I want to give you an example from a personal setting on that. Julie and I, Julie, lead this way. This is Julie. Julie is my wife. We lead the church together in Barnsley at Hope. Oh, in case you don't know, I am Paul. I lead the church at Hope House Church in Barnsley, part of the ground level team, and look after North Connection. Julie has cancer. Put that in front of you. And when we first heard about that, we were really, come on, we're going to beat this in God in faith. We declare this and we're going to own that and we're going to break through this. And then the long haul starts. Then the treatment starts. And you know what? We've got to walk this through faith and coping. And as a church, as church leaders, you've got to understand that your leadership team, your home group leaders, your youth leaders, your kids leaders, I'm really dead thrilled that Charlie Lockwood is crocheting at the same time as Julie's crocheting next to me as well. Creative, be creative. We have to do the long haul and understand that your people are in the long haul too, and they're facing some of the same pressures. The excitement is now gone, reality is biting, and we've got to keep them motivated and connected, but understand there's a degree of fear in there. So the second thing, do be immediate. Do be immediate. Here's what we can do now. Talk to your church with the, here's what we can do today. Give them the small wins today. And that might be for us, you know, we've increased our food bank. And that means I've been able to release 1 or 2 new volunteers to run food bank, to run it well and appropriately with health and safety in mind. But it's a small win now that builds on what we can already do, that helps people feel that we're contributing something, that we're part of this big picture. So find the small wins now. Be immediate about what you do. Yeah, we want to talk about the future church and the new church that's coming. I'm going to mention that in a few minutes and refer to it ever so slightly. But right now, people are living in it. You know, when you're living in the trenches on the front line, you might dream about not being on the front line, but every time you wake up, you're on the front line. And our people, I'll tell you now, that's how most people feel. They feel like they're in the trenches on the front line and they're trying to just understand it and get through it. And it's wise for us to be immediate and acknowledge that and try to give those people a new role. So how do we practically do that? Involve them more than lead them as time passes by. Right now, we've been through a phase where we need to be the leader, but increasingly we need to involve our wider leaders in this journey. Okay, we've given them some security, we've given something of our strength, in our energy, our vision, we've maintained something, we've been the shepherd's voice, but now we need to slowly begin to include them and involve them in that decision making, that conversation. So they know that they still have ministry within the church. Pastor them through it, walk them through it, and acknowledge that they're facing these things, and keep a rhythm through them, with them through the small tasks. So, you know, make sure that they're the ones with their connect group, that are calling their connect group, that they're texting their home group, that their values still remain. So encourage them to carry the weight of pastoring in the church. You can't. That is their call. That is their role. That is why they're there. That is why with the gifting we've recognised in them, encourage them to discover new ways of doing that, to stay involved. Don't overlead them. Trust them with the gifting God has given them, but do protect them. Do protect them. Stand by them. Get their back. And the third thing I want to say to you about our core team, do be normal with them. Do be normal. You and they lead because of who you are. Remind them that who they are is who they are in God, and that they have a role and a purpose in that church because of who they are. Help them feel secure in that. Remind them of that, and remind them regularly. Our normal church is gone, but encourage them to maintain the vision of the church, the values of church, and the identity of the church that remains, because they're the people that can carry that as much as you. And so I encourage you to push them towards that, to carry that. You know, together, they and you are going to be creating the new future. What the church looks like will be how you all react and respond and relate together now. That will form a big part of the foundation for the church that will be in a few months' time. So celebrate anything they do. Celebrate any small, if they make a few phone calls or a few text messages, if they help out in food bank or just give you a call to ask how you are, celebrate that. Because in the midst of their trauma, in the midst of their anxiety right now, they're still choosing to care for another. And that needs to be recognised. We need to value that and honour people with that. And then one final thing can I say on this? Monitor their social media. It sounds really like Big Brother. But so many people in stress time turn to social media because it's easier to type something and to splurge something than it is to say something face to face. And right now, most people are just able to type. It's important to remind people that if they are a leader of the church, even if the church isn't gathering, they are still leaders in the church. And we lead when we go to the supermarket, we lead on social media, And so encourage them not to splurge all the mess on social media. Get them to call you and let them splurge on you. Let them let it all out. Make sure there is a forum for people to say, this is how bad I feel, this is what I'm worried about. But encourage them to know that they're always leaders, and that, you know, that is a high call and a challenge for people at that time. Okay? So the third thing I want us to look at, wow, we are machine gunning through this. The third thing, congregational pastoral strategy. It is, in a sense, the biggie. You know, what you set in place now will very likely be part of the new normal church in the long term. So take a long, hard look at what you've already started doing in the last month and think to yourself, do I want to carry on doing that? Can I imagine doing that for the next 5 years? Will it be right to do that for the next 5 years? So you need to learn to understand what is going to be a temporary rhythm, an emergency response and preparation plan, and what is part of the ongoing life of church. Don't hold anything too tightly right now. Don't set anything in stone. I encourage you not to do that, because you know, you could be stuck with it. Now is a great time to let some things go and not revive them in a few months' time. But now is a time also to start imagining what can be and what we could put in place, and start to lay the foundation of that now in conversation, in presentation, online, and begin to plant into people the possibility of what the future can look like, whilst not denying the situation that they're living in now. So, what are the key things that we need to maintain? Number one, our normal church rhythm, Sunday. When you meet on a Sunday normally, that is still the primary gathering of church. We may be separate, but we can still gather. We can still be together. And so your Sunday rhythm is so important. Make sure there's something out there on a Sunday that people can engage with and know that the wider church is engaging with. You know, that's where they draw their weekly feed from. I know we say that we should be encouraging our people to be 7-day faith people, but the reality is lots of our folk will come along on a Sunday for their top up to get through the week. You know, it's just acknowledge that it's a truth. Just accept that you know and I know that that is a reality. So work with that and give them the rhythm of their Sunday that can still catch them, inspire them, help them to belong and to connect. I have to say, we've noticed that many of our prodigals are reconnecting with us on a Sunday because they're remembering the family that they belong to and the family that they want right now. Keep a lookout for that. Be aware that you want them to connect back into the rhythm of the church as well. Speak more about that in a moment. And then the other thing that we do is midweek. Most of us do midweek church of some sort, home group, small group. Again, I encourage you, find a way to do that. Whether for us, that's often through Zoom and Facebook Messenger and phone calls and text. We try to do that face to face. We try to make that work well. I encourage you to do that because they're the pegs that people's life rhythms. And we don't need to take those away. We can maintain it. And that will be great for the mental health of our congregation long term. And that's going to be a big consideration in the months to come. But then there's also, so concentrate on those things. But there are additional inputs that we can do. Isn't it great that we can get people to do little videos, little encouragement, little Bible studies? Do those things. Email Bible studies out to people. Not everybody will take it up. But, you know, when you receive something, even if you don't read it, even if you don't open it, you've received something from the church. You're still being remembered, you're being connected, you're being thought about. And all of that matters because here's what we want to do. And please take note of this. In our attempt to engage church, in our drivenness, in our fear of losing church, we mustn't train our people to become consumers. We want to build them into being producers and to be fruitful. And at the moment, we're banging so much information out there. Our congregations are watching Bethel and Elevation Church and Hillsong Church. They're doing Strictly Come Dancing, but with preaching. So they're listening to every preacher that they can hear online and making comparisons and scoring you all. You know what? They're learning to consume automatically. What we really, really need to do is to keep speaking into their production, into their producing, their growing and their maturing. So whatever we do, ensure that. So how do we do that? First of all, our output must speak into an acknowledgement of their situation. So when you do a Sunday's online thing or a midweek thing or send an email letter out or note out, acknowledge their situation. Encourage them in that situation, and talk about fruitfulness in that situation. So acknowledge, encourage fruitfulness. I'd like to give you a practical example. We have a lady in our church, I'm just going to call her Margaret. Margaret is 84 years old. I think she's probably one of the oldest people in our church, generally quite a young church. She's everybody's grandma. She's been around the church for actually just a few months. We've known her for years, but only a few months. Her son is with us, and she was widowed quite recently and felt like she lost everything. She lived by herself. She has a TV set and a landline, and that's it. But she now is part of the church, comes on a Sunday. She was settling in, she's becoming part of the life of that, and suddenly all of that has gone. And she's now completely isolated with a son that's in lockdown with symptoms. So she has virtually no visitors. But when I talk to her and get listening to her, here's what I discover. I acknowledge the isolation of her situation. I encourage her that God has not done with her yet, that there's a purpose. And then I see that she's fruitful. You know, this lady is phoning around people in the church and pastoring them and encouraging them and stirring them. And then she phones me up and one or two other people and unloads. She gets it out of the system. And then she goes back on the telephone and phones people up. And she thought, well, if they're not going to remember to phone me, I can remember to phone them. And she's become one of our great pastors in the church. Just so you do know, she was one of the first female hospital chaplains in the country decades ago. So she's a remarkable lady, and I will sing her praises all day. But you know what? We acknowledge her situation, we encourage her in it, and she's fruitful. And that's the target for everybody in our church. So the second thing I want to say to you, when we talk about our congregation, the congregation needs you when you're online doing your online sermons. They need you, first of all, to be speaking to them. You're speaking to them. I'm speaking to Hope House Church more than anybody else when I'm online. Okay, it's great to have a worldwide audience, and I can see online when I'm speaking online, I have got a worldwide audience. Look at me. Doesn't make any difference to me if somebody in Brazil is watching. Makes no difference whatsoever, because I'll never meet them. I'm please God that anything I say might bless them, but I am called, and you are called, to your local church. Local church is the hope of the world. It's the foundation. It's God's foundation for what we are. And you need to be speaking into the local church. Is that okay? So I know you're tempted to speak to the people around the world and to all the people, the thousands that might be tapping in, but you've probably got your congregation watching. Speak first to them. Let them know that you are authentically encouraging them. Okay, they will notice if that's not true. They will notice if you're not being authentic. You see, it's been commented that when I preach on a Sunday morning, I tend to wear my jeans and my denim jacket and my trainers. Well, that's because when I'm at church, normally that's what I wear. I'm not going to suddenly put a suit and tie on or wear a collar, because I'm not trying to impress anybody. I'm trying to engage my congregation that know me. And you need to be the same. Be authentic. Be authentically you. Speak with a voice that sounds like you. Don't try to emulate Bethel Church or Hillsong. You know what? From your front room, that's going to be incredibly difficult anyway. But I have seen people try. God bless them. I love the passion. But realistically, don't compete with them. You're not in a competition. So I encourage you. I want to say to you, who you are is incredibly precious right now. To encourage you with that knowledge that who you are as a leader speaking into the wider church is so precious. They want you to be you, not to pretend to be slick. I think actually right now slick is a bit of a turn off. Slick is a bit of a, we all know that we're speaking from front rooms and back bedrooms and in the garden and in the kitchen. There's something beautifully authentic about that, because the very first church, it only met in houses. It only did low key, unslick. There's something actually very godly about the way we're having to do church now. Very real. Embrace that and celebrate it. It's not going to go away quickly. So rather than complain about it, just recognize that's who we are. That is our identity. And the third thing, I actually really want to reiterate, maintain that habit of gathering. Maintain that habit of gathering. Don't think you can put things on hold. We have got to gather church and encourage those that are not connected, not gathering, to gather as much as possible. So your Sundays, your midweeks matter. Practical, connect to them. with your Connect groups, you're probably finding that more people are wanting to be part of them. So on a practical note, encourage people to connect to your home groups, your small groups, those that aren't normally in them. And if people aren't asked to be in them, delegate them into one anyway, and get your home group leaders to phone them up, to drop them a text, just so that they know they're in touch. And there are lots of people on the edge of the church who've been on the edge for a long time, who perhaps are a little bit embarrassed about saying, can I be in a Connect group right now? Well, you know, what we can do is make that first step for them. Can't impose it, but we can crack the door open for them. And actually, they can learn the rhythm of church again at that point. Their face can become known around church again. And this is great for prodigals. We've got a number of prodigals reconnecting to church. It's great that their face and their voice is known on social media, on Connect group, Zoom meetings and Messenger meetings. They get to know that and to see that. They get familiar with people, so that when we do gather again together, it will feel like an incredibly natural thing to do. So I encourage you to do that. Prodigals can be blended back into church, so that it will be like they've never been away. We had the amazing joy a couple of weeks ago of receiving an email from a member of our church that had not been around for really a couple of years. And it was an email of real genuine repentance, of understanding that, wow, I've walked away from my family, I've listened to other people, but this church is my family, and I want to be near you right now. And you know, my prayer for that person is that as we blend them back into life with the church, yes, it's remote, yes, it's digital, but it is real. You know, we are still gathered church, and we want to give that sense of gathered church, that when we return to meeting, it will be a natural step, and we'll have given them the rhythm to meet on a Sunday, the rhythm to connect midweek. So it's a natural thing to do when we physically do those things. That extends into our new contacts as well. I don't know about how you're doing, but we have had quite a number of new people connect to church. Our church's followers have gone through the roof. And with the statistics you can do, you can see that most of those are local people. So that gives me great encouragement for the future. You may not be able to check the stats for your church, but I think it's reasonable to imagine that many of the people watching you online or connecting to your social media are probably local people as well. Enjoy that. Know that there is that your voice, although you're addressing your church, people are watching you. We've had new people connect to us. I had one young man who's battling with life. He's just got himself clean from drinking drugs. So it's special. I'd love to spend personal face-to-face time with him. I can't. But what we have done with him and others, we connect them into our small groups. So we immediately give the details to the Connect group leader, who can include them in the conversation, in part of that discussion, in part of that belonging, because we want that new person to develop that church rhythm as well, that church rhythm of belonging and being part of. So I encourage you to do that. Don't treat them as trophies when they connect with you. Treat them as part of the body of the church. So new people are not trophies. They're part of the congregation, they're part of the church. Remember, what you do now with that new person connecting with you online will create a picture of what normal church is for them into the future. So you need to be very clear about how church works. Okay, so here are some thoughts to think on in that, with that in mind. Don't react to the situation. Don't copy other people. Don't compete with other people. Instead, plan your program. Respond to the situation. Prepare for the weeks ahead. And more than anything else, just be authentically real and you. Hope House, we have this phrase that we use all the time: connecting real people to a real God in real life. And everything we do gets run through that. And we think, is this real or is this hyper spiritual? Is this about real people's lives? And right now, real people's lives are queuing to go to Morrison's. Real people's lives are social distancing. And if you're like me, when I'm in the car, I social distance in my car now. Like, I freaked out when a pedestrian crossed the road in front of me, and psychologically, she walked right past my door, and I kind of leaned away. That is the world we now live in. And we have to be real in that conversation, and yet not unspiritual. So social media, video, email, calls, etc., they're all going to set the tone for you as a church now, but into the future. Be sure that we are Oh, I don't know what just happened then, but I've had a pretty picture. I've lost you all. Right, I'm going to continue and assume that you can still hear me because you've all disappeared off my screen. Oh, you're all back again.
We can hear you, Paul.
Thank you. Excellent. I just got a picture of people mountain climbing. Don't know what that was about. Maybe that's just the nature of this seminar. It's like mountain climbing. You know, you're nearly at the top, but just when you're nearly at the top, you're nearly finished. There's another plateau. I'm sorry if that's how you feel. Maintain a sense of together, even when you're in isolation. Don't major all the time on your separation and division when you're talking, but talk about your togetherness. You know, when you're doing a Sunday morning sermon or an online connect group or sending email out, talk about the fact that as a church, you are still together, even in isolation. You know, we are physically isolated, but not socially isolated. And you need to drip feed that into people's minds because mentally all sorts is going on. And I want to now talk about for a little bit. Now, some people won't like this. Some people want to pray against this, stand against this, cast it out, deal with it, proclaim over it in the name of the Lord, and all these things. But I promise you this, mental health is a massive issue in our churches right now because it's a massive issue in society and it's going to be a huge issue in the weeks and months ahead. And when lockdown is finished, mental health fallout will still be with us as churches. It just is the truth. It just is what it's going to be. There will be people in your congregation now that are already on antidepressants and already struggling with life. And church is their strong tower that they run to. You know what? They're going to need that strong tower more than ever in the Lord. You need to know that mental health is going to be an issue that will be with you. And so I encourage you, prepare for that now. I know I'm really fortunate. I'm really blessed. I've got 2 or 3 trained counsellors in our congregation, and one of them is a trained trauma counsellor and specialist. So I know we've got a head start on this stuff, and it's very much at the heart and mind of what we do as a church. I encourage you to be aware of it. So prepare now. And here are some of the things that practical steps I'm going to give you, and then I'm going to offer you some practical materials I can send out to you that you can use, that anybody unskilled can use in church, that will help people manage anxiety and the stresses and mental health issues that people are facing right now in the weeks and months to come. Is that okay? So first of all, remember the kids in the church still matter. So when we're dealing and talking to church on a Sunday morning midweek, our children still matter. They mustn't be put onto a back burner until we can have Sunday school again. So we need to be doing things that speak into the lives of our kids. You know, you're feeling anxious because so much of your life has changed. How weird is it for our children when all of their patterns have gone and mum and dad are at home all the time, and maybe mum and dad are rowing more than ever because they're at home all the time. You know, that stuff will be happening in the background. All their friends are absent. What if you take your children out for their daily 1-hour walk, and the kids down the street are on the swings, but you're saying, no, we can't go on the swings, we're not allowed to. You know, there's an injustice and a lack of integrity there that kids see that causes great stress for them. So I'm going to give you some materials or be able to forward some materials that help children deal with the stresses that they're facing. So I want to talk you through some of the practical steps we've done. We've begun an isolation conversation. This is how we're referring to it. We're calling it an isolation conversation as a church. So every week we do a Facebook meetup, and we call it our live lounge. It's our lounge to everybody else's lounge, and we do it live, very deliberately. It works very well when you stream to Facebook, and then we've got a separate phone with a number on. People can dial in and have a conversation in front of everybody. It gives an immediate sort of sense of all of us gathering and being together. And part of that, we have the isolation conversation, which is one of our mental health specialists having a talk through some of the stuff. And, you know, we don't necessarily give advice out on that. We just acknowledge that the stresses and anxieties are real. And it's proving so powerful and so important. We then follow that up by emailing out and posting on our Facebook page. By the way, we found Facebook invaluable because that's the most immediate form of contact with people. People are checking out their Messenger and their Facebook all the time at the moment. So I encourage you to have a look at doing that if you don't now. So we follow our conversations up with some practical help online as well. We do interviews, so we can interview members of the church. We'll phone in and we do arrange a little interview with them about what they're facing. We had a mum on the other day talking about working with supported families and talking about her situation with her toddlers at home. You know, why is that important? Because it acknowledges real life. And yet it's within the context of being a church family, a spiritual family. And so I encourage you to put together things like that. You know, Bible studies are great. Sermons online are great. But, you know, that isn't our whole life, is it? That isn't the wholeness of what we are as people. Actually, we are social creatures. And Jesus was social with his people. You know, he spent time with them. They were friends. They ate together, they chatted together, they talked together. We've got to maintain that and create that and acknowledge that our people need to be together. So to give you a clue as to how that's working, this week on Sunday night in our live lounge, you can find it if you want to, we're having a live lounge pyjama party. So the entire church, if you log on to our live lounge meeting, that isolation conversation on Sunday night from 6, we're all going to be wearing pyjamas and sending photographs of each other wearing our pyjamas to prove that we're doing it. Why are we doing that? Simply because it's real life. Because half of our people are living in pyjamas 6-7 days a week right now. So we're just going to have a bit of a fun pyjama party. But actually, there's some spiritual depth and there's some pastoral support within that. And so I encourage you to be practical. Tell stories of the wins that people have got. We're loving to tell stories when things have come to us. You know, it's things like supermarket phoned us up and said, "Do you run a food bank? We've got a load of food for you." You know, tell those stories. That stuff really matters. Celebrate people's normal lives. And if one of our parents or grandparents phones up and says, "Oh, one of my kids did this and they've really learned to cope and they're learning to bake," celebrate that, because that gives strength to other people knowing that everybody else is facing the journey. And then one more thing I want to tell you about practical pastoral help in the church. We've created as a church this thing called our isolation creation group. And so we discovered, and perhaps you've discovered this, that all the time people are doing creative things. They're learning to bake, they're learning to paint, they're discovering new skills and new crafts. Celebrate those things. Don't let them happen in isolation. Let them be part of the body of the church. So we've created a page on our Facebook website where people can post pictures of their new creativity. It helps us to connect with people, to see them as real people, and it helps them share something of themselves, something of their value, that if we comment on it and like it, love it, it invests into an individual, that they're still noticed, that they still matter. You know, that matters as much as praying for them on the phone, as much as you taking time out and bringing them before the Lord. Do all of that prayer stuff. I encourage you to do it, obviously, but engage with them as real people as well. So what I'm going to do is I've got a whole pile of mental health and anxiety resources. Would that be helpful to people if I send them out? Great. I'll send them to Ground Level Centre and get them to forward them. Some great materials on that. So it's dealing with anxiety for children. There's a 7-minute HIT program for kids and charts for kids I can send you. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 grounding program and a self-protection guide. Really simple, accessible mental health supports that you don't need to be a professional to be able to run. It's common sense, but it's really powerful and really helpful. And then, so the fourth thing I want to say for a couple of minutes before we have question time, for anybody that's still with me and awake. Number 4, community pastoral strategy. Now, I know I said that we primarily are caring for our churches at this time, but the truth is everybody is watching you. Your neighbours are watching you, the local authority are watching you, other churches are watching you, other charities and community groups, the supermarket, everybody is watching church right now, seeing how we're responding, how we're coping. I want to encourage you to be a prophetic partner with all of those people that are watching you, and to talk about doing life, not doing survival. You know, as a church, we're about bringing hope and life, not survival. So if people are watching you, be sure that what you put out, what you speak, how you live is about being prophetic, about the future, about trust, it's about faith, it's about knowing there's a confidence that won't be shaken. So live life, even if when you come home, you're quietly falling apart at the seams, find somebody to talk to about that. But you know what? They need you to be a prophetic voice right now. They need you to speak hope into a situation. Let me tell you about a telephone call I had with a local councillor that I've known for some years. We work with the local authority quite closely as a church. We partner with them. They fund one or two of our projects. So we have a good long-standing relationship with them. But here's what was said to me. We're not interested in the church being heroes. We just want to partner with you. That's so important right now, because the temptation is to celebrate all the good things that we do. Oh, look at us, we've done this. We've given out, we've run 25 food banks in the last 13 days. We're doing it twice a day. We're doing this, we're doing that, we're doing that. You know what? There are lots of heroes right now, and there are heroes that the community want to celebrate, that they want to applaud, and they'll be applauding tonight. Our job is to be part of the big picture, be a prophetic voice, and to breathe life, to be yeast in that. We are a lamp on a stand. People are looking. So let's be part of the big picture, be ambassadors for Christ in that. It's not about our own glory. It is about pointing at the Lord. And it is about being part of the serving of our town. Jesus, who could have been everything, humbled himself to become a servant. So here's what I want to say to you. Be cautious in public about doing humble bragging. Do you all know what humble bragging is? I'm going to assume you all know what humble brag is. Okay, be very cautious that you don't accidentally do that. In celebrating the good stuff that God is doing, be sure to give him the glory. But even as we're doing that, recognize the good stuff that other community groups, the local authority, local schools, local supermarkets, the NHS, the care community. There are people in our society right now that are doing amazing things. We're not in competition with them. We want to bless them. So be sure that we're not humble bragging as church in the midst of this, that there isn't a creeping spiritual arrogance, but we are part of our community's big picture. We're in the world, but we may not be of it, but we are in it. So let's partner with it and bless them. Okay, acknowledge that our community has fear. And then just finally, as we're acknowledging our community is fearful and worried, don't dismiss them. Don't dismiss, even if they're over the top and outrageous. You'll have all done that thing where you're walking down the pavement and somebody coming towards you has done an exaggerated leap to one side to avoid catching COVID-19 from you. Our whole world is anxious right now. Let's not dismiss it, but walk that anxiety with them and acknowledge it. So celebrate your local community's good news. If your local authority does something, your school does something, be part of that celebration. Be part of the big picture of serving the town, and sow seed now that can be reaped long term. I think our relationship and connections and level of respect that we're receiving from our local authority and local community groups is higher than it's been for years. There's a flash in the pan sense that could pass away quickly, but I think we can sow seed now that can be reaped in the future if we are genuinely loving and serving our communities. Okay, this is not about making us look good. Right now, our community just need healing, feeding, caring for, encouraging. And that really should be what we're best at. So let's be sure that we're a voice to do that. We need to be the aroma of God in a fearful time. So let's be the aroma of God. Don't try to have all the answers. Simply participate. Simply participate with your community. To close, the Bible says that when the church was scattered, everywhere the church went, the people carried good news. They carried good news and hope. So those little isolated pockets of church families that were scattered from Jerusalem, everywhere they went, they were good news. Church, we can be good news people at this particular time. So I encourage you to grab hold of those 4 strategies. I hope some of that, and about 45 minutes of machine gunning you with information, some practical stuff and some spiritual, I hope it was of value to you. So what I'm going to do now is say, if you want to ask a question, if there are any questions, yesterday we had loads, but if you do have any questions or queries or criticisms or want some clarity, now's the time to do that. And the best way to do that, I'll scroll through the screens. If you just put your hand up, and then I can click on your screen and ask you to unmute your mic. Is that okay, everybody? Brilliant. So I'm scrolling now. If somebody puts their hand up, I can answer a question. Hey, some of my people are online, so if you're one of my people from Hope House and nobody's put their hand up, you put your hand up and pretend you're from somewhere else. Is that okay? I've got somebody else, crochet. Got the amazing Paula Painter on that I've been bigging up all morning. She's on here. Come on, somebody put your hand up. Oh, I was inundated with questions yesterday. I've been too thorough today. Anybody want to give us any stories about what they're facing?
Paul, can I ask a question? Marina Gallagher.
I'm going to scroll through. Where are you?
Marina Gallagher.
Yeah, go on. I can't see you, but ask the question. That's great. Yeah.
I am a counsellor, and I know that you spoke about there being counsellors in your church.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can. Yeah.
But I wonder how the church feels about taking on the insurance and all the legal paraphernalia that's behind counselling. And how do you do that in your church?
Yeah. Well, first of all, what I would say is we are. I would actively avoid setting up counselling sessions that were run at that kind of official level. This is about encouragement and giving people tools. I think there will be a time when specific counselling for some people may be needed. As a church, we will pastorally care for people and guide people, pray for people, spend time with them listening. But there are times as a church when this is our current practice and will be our ongoing practice, where we understand that professional counselling and help may be needed. And as a church pastor, I understand that my responsibility is to get them the best care. So in the same way that I might invite an evangelist or a prophet to come to church, I will also invite somebody to get connected with a counsellor that we trust, that we have a relationship with, preferably Christian counsellor, but also certified, recognised. So we will put people that have very specific mental health needs that are beyond just normal encouragement and giving normal tools. We will help them access professional and proper mental health counselling. Or trauma counselling. We've done that on many occasions over the years, and we think that's incredibly important. Just because for church leaders, we are not experts at everything. So what I would do now is stick to useful tools that people can use in their everyday life to help them cope. But if there are issues bigger than that, then we might have to recognise that we need to help them find professional support. In the future, I would love to think that we have a trained, insured and equipped wing of Hope House Pastoral Care that is professionally indemnified and insured and cared for and trained. But right now that doesn't exist. But we do still have a pastoral responsibility and a prayer responsibility and encouragement whilst partnering with known and trusted counselling groups. So that's where we are right now. That's what I do. Does that help answer the question?
It does. I kind of misunderstood and thought that you had in-house counsellors.
We have counsellors. We have got a couple of registered counsellors in the church, but they're part of the church community, which is a great place for me to get advice from and to get inspiration from, and they are so good.
Yeah.
But
I understand.
is that okay? But anyone else?
That's fine. That's answered that.
I think another relevant factor in that debate, where I live, it's a 5-month wait for NHS counselling. Yeah. So that's just another factor into it, really.
Yeah, I mean, we are very fortunate where we live that we have a very good network. We're in South Yorkshire. We have a very good network of Christian counsellors who are both secularly and Christian qualified and recognised. So we're able to draw on them when needed for particular situations and circumstances. And we will do that because sometimes, it's okay to wait a few months for the NHS. But sometimes people have immediate situations where they need immediate help, and so we will do that if necessary. We consider that to be part of the expense and gift of the church to do that as well, if necessary. So we would be prepared to pick up the expense of that as far as we could for the given period.
That's great. Good.
Anyone else? Well, we've got about 5 minutes left. I'm not going to make you stay to the full 5 minutes, but if anybody wants anything, anybody else want to ask anything?
Well, Richard.
Yeah. Hi, Richard. Yeah, Richard Tucker. I can't see you, but I can hear you.
Bradbury.
Richard Bradbury. Sorry, Richard Bradbury.
Yeah. One thing that I'm conscious of, and I value your sort of thoughts on it, is there can be a lot of pressure for us as particularly as main leaders to look at what other people are doing and try and do the same thing. How do you deal with that, and have you got any advice for us generally?
I actually, I hoped I touched on it a little bit as we're speaking. I think it's really, really important, and more than ever right now, that we are authentically us. You know, we heard yesterday morning, and I mentioned it yesterday myself as well, that the local church is everything, in my opinion, and the Lord deals with local church. So it's important that we recognise that if we're in Spalding or Barnsley or Retford or wherever it may be, that we are the local church and a local church leader primarily called to that setting and that context. So our leadership needs to reflect that context. So, you know, we for a lot of years have tried to develop an identity at Hope House that says we are Hope House Church, this is how we work, this is our approach, this is our style, these are our values, this is our vision. And right now that needs to be running through. And if you don't have that in place as a church, now is a good time to sit back, because so much has been stripped away. You can actually see what are your cores, what are your core values. So I encourage you to look at that now and be sure that what you're doing and the information you're carrying, the contacts you're making, carry that identity of you. Copying other churches won't work. It will look and feel artificial to the congregation and to those people looking in. They know who you are as a leader. They know your traits, your good and bad. They know who you are, and it's better to be honest with that and to deal with that, because that brings a level of integrity and trust. And right now, people need that level of integrity and trust. So there's no point me pretending to be somebody or something I'm not. Actually, who I am, and here's a big thing to say, because it's true for you, Richard, and it's true for all of us. If we are truly called by God and appointed, then every one of us can say, for such a time as this. And we have to walk in a way humbly that says the Lord knew that this time, you know, he gets that this time is happening and that we are his leaders in his local church at this time. And we have to confidently but humbly walk through knowing that he will equip us to lead our local setting. There's a whole book on there, I think, Richard. Does that help a little bit?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's more about, as a leader, dealing with the pressure that you can feel. Yeah. Because other people are doing this, that, and the other, and you know, how do we deal with it individually? I guess was really where I was going.
Yeah, individually, you know, it's not a competition. It's really not a competition. There are people far better at tech than I am. There are people far better speakers than I am. But you know, I think it does fall back onto the truth that if we're appointed by God into this setting, people know us and they know our heart. So I may be speaking from the back bedroom, and the first time I tried to do that, the set I created literally fell down around me halfway through the presentation. But you know what? That kind of was authentically me. That's exactly what I would have anticipated happening. And you know, people know us. They know what we are. So just hold on to being who you are as a church leader. You don't try to impress anybody. Just be vulnerable. If there's a time to be vulnerable and honest about how we are right now and how we see the church and how we love the church and how we speak with a voice that is ours, you know what? I have to accept that I'm a guy from South Yorkshire, from Barnsley, with this accent and this face and this heart. It just is. There's no point pretending I'm anything other. And equally, right now, I'm the person that got appointed to lead this church in this season. I don't say that with arrogance. I say that in a very humble way and quite frightened way, but know that God is sufficient. And we've got to have faith over our fear and not to copy and not to pretend.
Yeah, brilliant.